If you're turning 60 this year, you could lose $1,428 a year in Social Security for the rest of your life. Oh no! All right, let's dive into this. It's an article from Market Watch, which I chuckled at. Dateline October 3rd, 2020, by a guy named Alan Cohen. Now, who is Alan Cohen? I don't know, so we're going to read down here. You always need to do this, my friends, when it comes to reading articles on anything, a financial. I just say anything, generally speaking. Alan Cohen is a senior fellow for the Center for American Progress, a far-left think tank, working primarily on Social Security and federal budget issues. All right. So he's a far lefty with a far left think tank, writing an article on October 3rd telling people that if you're born in 1960, if you're 60 years old today, you could lose $1,428 in Social Security. Now, if you're following my channel at all, you're probably going to know where this is going to go. It's going to talk about average wage indexing. We've already talked about this back in April with my man Andrew Biggs over at the AEI, the American Enterprise Institute. So the fact that Alan is writing this now, when we've already discussed it back in April, just shows his political fear-mongering. There's no other way around. And that's what the left does. They fear-monger. They scare you. They say, oh my goodness, because he's going to share with you some reasons you should be scared, and he's going to give you an answer. Of course, the answer is always more government. So let's read what Alan says, and we'll dive into this a little bit in more detail and just tear it up. The decline in average wages this year will reduce your benefits in Social Security unless Congress acts. Always need the government to do something to save us from ourselves, which, of course, the government is what put us in this mess to begin with. Let's see, one little talked about issue. Well, it's not little talked about if you follow this channel. Maybe on the left it is, but not on the right. One little talked about issue is that 3 million workers who are turning 60 this year will likely see a very significant reduction in their lifetime Social Security benefits. This is expected due to a nationwide decline in the average wage index because of the crisis. Benefits for these retirees would be significantly lower in each and every year of their lifetimes. Oh my goodness, we're all going to die. Fortunately, it's not too late to fix it. There's a solution in Congress by John Larson. You remember him that Devin interviewed. There's some good stuff in his bill. The 2100 Act, I think, mostly bad, but there's some good stuff in there. I think the Republicans should counter, but we'll have to wait till after the election. Congress should pass Larson's legislation as soon as possible. So look, man, this guy's coming from the far left Center for American Progress. The fact he's saying Congress should pass this as soon as possible from a lefty right before an election tells you the bill is junk. There's no other way around that. So I just put aside the 2100 bill just because you can tell you can tell the benefits of the bill by who likes it. In this case, the bad guys in the Centers for American Progress. These aren't good people, man. These are, I'm not saying they're evil people. I'm saying they don't have they want the government to control more and more of your life. That's all there is to it. We don't want that. If you want the government to be in control, inherently, I'm a skeptic of your looking out for me, that's for sure. The Larson bill, because it's promoted by the Center for American Progress, tells me it's got a lot of left-wing crap in there. The initial benefits of Social Security are determined in part by the average wage index because the pandemic, no, what the pandemic? It was the response to it. Average wages are likely to fall in 2020 relative to 2019. Let's see. Average wages expected to drop 5.9% under the latest projections. Average wages are supposed to fall by 5.9%. Using this estimate, then, an average earner in the economy would turn 60 in 2020 would suffer a reduction of $1,428 a year, every year for his life. For those who earn substantially more than average, the loss would be much larger. All right. So how to fix it? Well, we got to get Congress must provide specifically legislation to fix it. All right. So let's another drop in the average wage index could be a real possibility as early as 2021. So let's see what he's saying. So he says under the latest projections, and we're going to read that. And this is from a testimony by the chief actuary, Stephen Goss, in terms of the House Ways and Means Committee. July 17th. What day is October 5th? So we got July, August, September, into October. It's over 3 months ago. This was a testimony. If that's the latest projections, are we missing something? Yes, we're missing Q3. So let's read this for a second here real quick. We're just going to talk about what he talks about. The 2020 Trustees Report was issued on April 22nd. with assumptions not anticipating the COVID-19 pandemic. All right, so remember, this is before the pandemic, the trustees report. The trustees report assumed an AWI of 3.5%. All right, so let's keep going down. Now, what they're talking about, at this time, it appears the initial scenarios for the above, basically saying that they were thinking it's going to be 15% below the trustees report, is too pessimistic. So our initial projections were too pessimistic. Let's see. For now, it appears that a scenario with a 10% lower than expected payroll and tax liability is more likely. All right, assuming we do not have a substantial second wave, which we don't. So at 10%. So now, all right. So let's read. Let's go here. Remember, just a second. We're gonna go to where he says 5.9 right there. 5.9. All right. Experience so far for 2020 suggests that the total wages for the year as a whole will be on the order of 10% below the level projected by the trustees report. If these preliminary estimates are realized, then the average wage used to determine the AWI would grow by about 9.1% less than the projected trustees report. But because the trustees report produces a 3.5% of the AWI, this means that the 2020 AWI would be about 5.9% the level of 2019. So that's where Alan, far lefty, is getting that 5.9% reduction in AWI to lead you to the $1,428 per year reduction. All right. So, and it's important to note these changes are consistent with the illustrative scenario described, and that the actual experience might be very different. Again, remember, this is at the end of Q2. So if we go here, this right here is a COVID at the end of Q2 right there when he was issuing that report. What has come back up? Look at that. That's the employment numbers, all employees. That is a V-shaped recovery right there. That's at the end of August. We've had stellar numbers for September as well. So now we're up here. Are we at where we were? No, but it's not. If it wasn't 5.9% here, because no one was projecting we'd have such a strong V-shaped economy run. No one was. So, first of all, the down market was less, as he says, Stephen Goss says, it wasn't nearly as bad as what they presumed, which means the growth, the up market was even better, was better than presumed. So, two positives. The down wasn't as bad. Q2 was not as bad as initially projected. Q3 significantly better than initially projected. So, the 5.9% that this guy talks about in their latest projections is scaremongering. You say, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose $1,400 a year. Well, if the latest projections were in July based on Q2 right here, then that's you better freaking, before you start jumping off a cliff, you better understand how these projections work and say, yeah, it's not going to be nearly as bad. It won't be. In fact, the funny thing is that this guy right here, Alan Cohen, is just talking about this now. The only reason they're talking about it now is because it's right before an election. So let's keep reading where he says 5.9. We talked about that right there. In particular, the AWI would not be allowed to decline from one year to the next for benefit computation and purposes. The AWI used for any year starting with 2020 would be replaced by the highest. So we talk about the bill that might be in front of Congress. All right. For workers who became newly eligible in 2022 would be at the same level as similar workers who became newly eligible in 2021, rather being 5.9% below. I just want to go back again real quick to show you how bad they were saying. In a webinar with the Bipartisan Policy Center on April 23rd, which is nothing but swamp dwellers, I described two simple potential scenarios. First, total earnings would be reduced to 15% below the trustees' intermediate projection, with full recovery expected earnings in 2021. And then we'd have total earnings for 2020 and 2021 being 15%. It wasn't going to be a full recovery until 2022. You can see right here, man. I mean, we're up here now. So we're not at full recovery, but we're certainly a hell of a lot closer than we were when this was published. I don't get the fear mongering. I just don't get it. Now, look, we can argue, should we pass some legislation to keep the AWI from dropping? I'm not having a problem with it, none whatsoever, because you didn't, especially when it comes to the freaking pandemic, you didn't do anything to deserve that. Nothing at all. But this has nothing, I mean, the freaking Larson stuff, no. And again, I don't even know if it's a 2100. I don't know what it is. But I will tell you, the facts are that you should not have an AWA reduce your payments right before you're getting ready to retire. AWI should say, have your payments reduced because of some freaking government mandated lockdown. That's insane. That should not hurt you. And so the same people that wanted to lock down the economy, the left wing, are the same people wanting the government to solve what they call it to begin with. Nuts. But anyway, thought you'd like that. Stop the fear mongering left. You got plenty of things you could hit on. This is just not good. You should not be fear mongering. All right, love to hear your comments. We'll see ya.